Some stories are not just about wealth or possessions. They are about love, trust, and the strength of the human spirit when faced with failure. This is the story of a mother and her daughter, two people whose paths seem to have diverged forever, yet fate brought them back together under the harshest of circumstances. A life of luxury, a marriage built on lies, and mistakes that seem to destroy everything. But sometimes, it is precisely through hardship that we discover the true value of life. Join me as we step into a story where love, lessons, and growth are tested to their limits. I can also create 3 alternative English versions. One suspenseful, one deeply emotional, and one inspirational, so you can pick the tone that fits your video best. Do you want me to do that? I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was Angela, my only daughter. Her voice was distant, almost icy as she said, "Mom, we're leaving for Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." Then she hung up. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing everything. And just like that, she tossed me aside as if I were nothing. But instead of crying, I took a deep breath and smiled. My dear Angela had no idea who she was dealing with. My name is Antonia Brooks. I'm 71 years old. And until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. 6 months earlier, my husband Robert had died of a sudden heart attack during breakfast, as he'd done every morning for 45 years. That morning he'd poured me coffee with cream, handed me toast, kissed my forehead, and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were the last words he ever spoke. After his death, Angela started coming around more often. She visited 3 times a week, helped me with the funeral, took me to the grocery store, and even urged me to get a checkup. "Mom, you have to take care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say with that warm smile I used to think was love. Now I knew it was just convenience. The beach house she sold wasn't just a piece of property. It was our sanctuary. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15 after years of hard work. Every summer, we made memories there, birthdays, Christmases, family dinners. Angela brought her boyfriends and later her husband Edward. I cooked, cleaned, and cared for everyone. I never thought my daughter would see it as nothing more than money. And the car? Robert's old Ford pickup. He loved it like a child. Washed it every Sunday, changed the oil himself. Always parked it in the same shady spot under the tree. Angela knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last tangible piece of him I had left. His scent still lingered on the seats. When the call ended, I sat silently in that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by other patients. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something inside me shifted, a calm I hadn't felt since the day Robert died. I remembered something I'd almost forgotten. 3 days before his death, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia, keep this in your dresser drawer. If anything ever happens to me, open it when you're ready." I tucked it away and, overwhelmed with grief after the funeral, I never opened it. But it was still waiting for me at home. The nurse called my name. The doctor told me I was healthy for my age, that I just needed more rest and better meals. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. On the envelope, on Angela's cold voice, and on Edward, who had always resented me. I walked slowly to the bus stop. My car was gone now, thanks to Angela, and waited. A strange, almost poetic feeling washed over me. She thought she had taken everything from me. But she didn't know my Robert. He was always one step ahead. As the bus pulled away, I watched the city blur past the window. People rushing with their own secrets, their own tragedies. I had mine too, and I was finally ready to uncover them. When I got home, I went straight to my bedroom. My heart was pounding softly in my chest as I opened the dresser drawer. There it was, the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it months ago. My fingers trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel the weight of the papers inside. On the front, Robert had written my name in his neat, familiar handwriting. I sat down on the edge of the bed we had shared for so many years. Outside, the last light of the day was fading, and shadows were beginning to stretch across the room. They used to frighten me after Robert died. But now, they felt almost like company. I took a deep breath and carefully opened the envelope, as if unwrapping a fragile gift. I had no idea my life was about to change. Inside were neatly stacked legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. The sight of his handwriting brought tears to my eyes. My dear Antonia, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive. I only wanted to protect you from unnecessary worries. Over the years, I invested our savings wisely in properties and businesses. We don't just have the beach house. We own 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We also have shares in 3 companies worth more than you can imagine. You are wealthy, my love. You always were, but now it's official. My hands shook as I went through each document. Deeds to houses scattered across the city, a modern condo downtown, a small motel by the coast, and yes, the 20-story apartment building where my daughter and her husband lived. Robert had quietly owned it for the past decade, but everything had been placed under a company name I'd never heard of. And according to the papers, I was the sole heir of that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I hadn't even known existed, with numbers so large they didn't seem real. I stared at the papers in silence, feeling a mix of shock, awe, and a rising sense of calm power. My daughter thought she had taken everything from me, but the truth was, I had far more than she could ever imagine. Robert had been a bus driver for 40 years, but behind the quiet, humble man I loved, he had also been a brilliant investor. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made together, he had quietly turned it into something greater, without ever telling me. In his letter, Robert explained why I kept it all a secret, Antonia, not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to worry about money, and I especially didn't want Angela to know. If she found out how much we really had, she would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we own. I smiled through my tears. How ironic. Our daughter had abandoned me, convinced we had nothing, when in truth, we had everything. That night, sleep was impossible. I wandered through the house, running my fingers along the worn furniture Angela always criticized for being too old. I paused at the wall of family photos, our lives frozen in frames. My gaze lingered on one in particular. Angela at 5 years old, sitting on Robert's lap, laughing with pure joy. Where had that little girl gone? When did she become so cold, so calculating? The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Angela again. Her voice was softer this time, almost sweet, but I had learned long ago that her kindness often came with a price. "Mom, how are you?" she began. "I just wanted to let you know we already transferred the money from the house and the car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you for a few months. We need the rest for our investment in Europe. Edward has this incredible business opportunity over there. 30% of my own property. How generous of them." "I see. Honey. And when are you leaving?" "This afternoon," she said cheerfully. "Our bags are packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe more if the business goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment. Something that fits your needs." Fits my needs. As if she had ever truly understood what I needed. "Okay, Angela," I replied evenly. "Have a safe trip." "Oh, Mom. I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much." Then she hung up. I stood there, holding the phone in my hand. And for the first time since Robert's death, I laughed. A real, uncontrollable laugh. The whole situation was absurd, almost comical. My own daughter had stolen from me, spoken to me like a burden, and all for some wild European dream that would probably crumble before it began. But what cut the deepest wasn't the money. It was how easily she had erased me from her life. 45 years of love, of sacrifice, of being her mother, reduced to a 2-minute phone call. Later, I checked my bank account. Sure enough, the transfer was there, an amount that might have seemed generous to her, but to me, it was nothing more than an insult. They had sold the beach house for far less than it was worth, Most likely because they needed the money fast. Robert's beloved truck had been sold for next to nothing. That afternoon, from my bedroom window, I watched Angela and Edward carry their suitcases out to a waiting cab. Edward struggled with 2 oversized suitcases while Angela clutched a sleek, expensive-looking carry-on. They were laughing, kissing, whispering plans to each other, like 2 carefree teenagers about to embark on the adventure of their lives. They never once looked up at my window. No way. No gouvier. When the cab disappeared down the street, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Robert's documents spread out neatly across the table. My hands traced the edges of the papers as I thought. I could call a lawyer, reclaim what was mine, undo everything they had done. But deep down, I felt there was a better way to handle this. Not just legally, but meaningfully. A lesson Angela wouldn't forget. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had managed Robert's affairs. He had been at the funeral, had shaken my hand gently, and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Well, now I did. Mrs. Brooks, he said, his voice kind and steady. It's good to hear from you. How are you? I'm doing well, Mr. Peterson, I replied calmly. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from Robert, and I don't fully understand them. Of course, he said without hesitation. Come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be waiting. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. In my dream, Robert was sitting in his favorite armchair, reading the newspaper like he always used to. When he saw me, he lowered the paper, smiled, and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke up with a feeling I hadn't known in so long. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't that hollow sadness either. It was something stronger. Determination. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to take back what was mine. But not the way Angela expected. The next morning, I dressed more carefully than usual. I slipped into my wine-colored dress, the one Robert always said made me look elegant. I fixed my hair, added a touch of makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a grieving widow anymore. I saw the woman I used to be. A strong woman. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown, in an old but elegant building with marble floors and tall windows that flooded the hallways with light. He greeted me with a warm smile. But as soon as I laid the documents on his desk, his expression shifted. From polite curiosity to quiet astonishment. "Mrs. Brooks," he said slowly, scanning the papers. "This is much more than I imagined. Robert was a very smart man. According to these documents, you are the owner of—" "I know, Mr. Peterson," I interrupted softly. "I've already read them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." He adjusted his glasses and leaned closer. "Everything is in perfect order. These documents are legitimate, and you are the rightful owner of all the properties. And there's something else." He looked up at me with a mix of respect and certainty. The sale of the beach house was illegal. Angela had no right to sell it. "We can get the house back immediately, Mrs. Brooks," Mr. Peterson said, scanning the papers. "And we can also proceed with legal action against your daughter for fraud." I looked at him steadily. "No, Mr. Peterson. I don't want legal action. I want to handle this another way. Quietly." He raised an eyebrow, curious, but nodded. "Of course. You're my client. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly reverse the sale of the beach house," I said calmly. "Do whatever is necessary to nullify that fraudulent transaction. And I want you to help me gain full legal control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives." He folded his hands thoughtfully. "I understand. It may take a few weeks, but it's entirely feasible." "Perfect," I said. "And Mr. Peterson, I don't want anyone to know I'm behind this. Not yet." When I walked out of his office, I felt as if I'd woken from a long, heavy sleep. The downtown streets were the same. People rushing, buses groaning, storefronts glowing. But to me, everything was different. I had a plan now. The next few weeks were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Officially, I was just a poor, abandoned widow whose daughter had taken everything. But in reality, I was a wealthy woman. silently pulling the strings to reclaim what was mine. Mr. Peterson worked with quiet precision, calling me every few days to update me on the legal process. I stayed in my house. It was still mine, though I was sure Angela had imagined me moving into some cramped little room somewhere. Each morning, I sat at the same kitchen table where Robert and I had shared a lifetime of breakfasts, drank my coffee, and then went for a walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with the kind of careful pity reserved for the recently widowed and the supposedly unfortunate. One afternoon, as I was watering the flowers in my front yard, Aurora, my neighbor and friend of many years, walked over. "Antonia, dear," she said gently, "is it true Angela went to Europe and left you all alone?" "Yes, Aurora," I replied with a soft smile. "She went with Edward. They have some business plans over there." "And how are you going to manage, sweetie? We all know Robert didn't leave much money." "If you only knew," I thought to myself. "Don't worry, Aurora. I'll be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring over some food or help with groceries." "You're very kind, but I'm all right truly," I assured her. She gave me that familiar look, the same one people had given me after the funeral. Compassion, mixed with quiet relief that it wasn't their tragedy. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything," she said. Conversations like this became routine. At the butcher, the bakery, the corner store, people spoke to me in soft voices, as if I might shatter. I nodded, smiled, and thanked them, while inside, a part of me almost enjoyed the performance. It was like living a double life. On the outside, the helpless widow. On the inside, the quiet architect of her own justice. Then one Wednesday morning, Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his voice carrying a smile. "I have good news. I was able to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers didn't know the transaction was fraudulent, so they got their money back without any problems. The house is officially yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Peterson," I replied calmly, though inside, a rush of satisfaction bloomed in my chest. "As for the building where Angela lives," he continued, "that one is more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company," Mr. Peterson explained. "But we need to make a few administrative adjustments so you'll have direct control. It should take about 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me updated," I replied. After hanging up, I sat alone in the kitchen, hands wrapped around my warm coffee cup, thinking about Angela. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks. Not a single call, not a single message, not even a postcard. In her world, I had disappeared the moment she got the money she wanted. But I knew that silence wouldn't last forever. Things were going to change. A few days later, I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Robert and I had traveled countless times. The house looked exactly as it had before, small, cream-colored, with a porch facing the ocean. A few potted plants on the steps were the only sign of the short-lived new owners. I sat on the curb across the street and stared at it for an hour. Memories flooded back. Summer afternoons when Angela was a little girl, running barefoot on the sand. Robert grilling fish on the barbecue, me making salads in the kitchen. Angela bringing her friends, then boyfriends, then Edward. All those years, all those moments, reduced to a single transaction. An older man came out of the house and noticed me. "Are you all right?" "Ma'am," he asked gently. "Yes, thank you," I said, just remembering. I knew the previous owners. "Oh," he said with sympathy. "What a shame about what happened. We were told the elderly woman was very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a great deal, but then we found out the sale was fraudulent. We had to give the house back." "I'm glad you didn't lose your money," I replied quietly. "Yes, luckily it all worked out. But we really loved this house." I left with a heavy heart. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was the cruelty of Angela's lie. She had told them I was sick. She had turned my vulnerability into her excuse. In her eyes, I wasn't a mother. I was just an obstacle to be removed. That night, I called Mr. Peterson again. "Mr. Peterson, I need your help with something else," I said. "I want Robert's truck back." "That may be more complicated, Mrs. Brooks," he explained. "The truck was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney allowing her to sell it. How could that be? Apparently, you signed it shortly after your husband's death. Don't you remember? And then it hit me. I could almost see Angela, standing in the kitchen with a stack of papers, telling me it was just for inheritance and funeral arrangements. I'd been so numb with grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. Is there any way to get it back? I asked. It's possible, he said. But we'll need to prove you signed under deception or coercion. Then let's do it, I answered firmly. I want everything they took from me. Over the next few weeks, my life fell into a strange rhythm. In the mornings, I played the part of the poor widow everyone pitied. I went to the market, smiled at the neighbors, and kept up appearances. But in the afternoons, I became someone else, a woman with a plan. I studied Robert's documents, met with Mr. Peterson, and learned more about finance than I ever thought I would. I discovered how carefully Robert had planned everything. The building where Angela lived wasn't just profitable from rent. It was in a rapidly appreciating neighborhood. I also found out that Edward was drowning in debt. He had taken out loans against the apartment, not realizing he didn't actually own it. When the banks discovered the truth, his world would collapse. One Friday, Mr. Peterson called with the best news yet. Mrs. Brooks, everything's finalized. You now have complete control of all your properties. And I managed to get Robert's truck back too. The buyer was an old acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it for a small compensation. Excellent work, Mr. Peterson, I said, a smile spreading across my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was no longer a victim. I was taking my life back, piece by piece. Now I need you to help me with one more thing, I told Mr. Peterson. Of course, Mrs. Brooks. What do you need? I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Brooks, are you sure you want to do this? Completely sure. She made it very clear that I no longer mattered in her life. Now she's going to learn just how much I actually do. I understand, he said carefully. Do you want me to send it to Europe? No. Give it to her when she returns. And I have a feeling that will be very soon. I wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, Aurora came rushing into my yard, breathless and brimming with neighborhood gossip. Antonia, did you hear? Edward's in trouble with the bank, she whispered as if sharing a scandalous secret. My brother-in-law works there. They're investigating some loans Edward took out using the apartment as collateral. But the apartment isn't his. Really? I asked, though I already suspected. Yes. And apparently, Angela had no idea. They say she'll have to come back from Europe to fix the mess. What a complicated situation, I said, hiding the calm satisfaction behind my polite tone. That's not even the worst part, Aurora added. Edward lied to her. There was never any business in Europe. He just wanted to run away from his debts. Perfect. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had expected. Angela had chosen to side with Edward, turning her back on me for him. And now, she was finally discovering the truth about the man she trusted so blindly. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, staring up at the stars. Robert used to say that the stars were the souls of people who had lived full lives, watching over their loved ones from the sky. If he was right, then he was up there, seeing his careful plans come to life. Thank you, my love, I whispered softly to the night sky. Thank you for taking care of me even after you're gone. The next morning, Mr. Peterson called early. Mrs. Brooks, I have news. Your daughter just arrived in the country. She's at the airport alone. Alone? I repeated. Yes. Apparently, Edward stayed in Europe. There are rumors they had a huge fight. I see. Did you send the letter? I'm sending it today. She should receive it tomorrow. I hung up the phone and stood still in the kitchen, feeling a strange mix of nerves and anticipation. Weeks of quiet maneuvering had led to this moment. It was time to make the first real move. Angela was about to learn that her mother was not the helpless victim she had imagined. Angela returned to her apartment on Tuesday night. I didn't have to see it myself. Aurora told me first thing the next morning, as usual. Antonia, she said, lowering her voice. Your daughter came back last night. I saw her with one suitcase. She looked awful, pale, exhausted, like she'd been crying the entire flight. All alone. And something strange happened. When the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to call the superintendent to let her in with the spare. I smiled faintly to myself. The storm was finally at her door. Edward had the keys. That could only mean one thing. He had either decided never to return or Angela had finally discovered the truth and fled. In either case, my daughter was back. And soon. She would receive my little welcome gift. Mr. Peterson called that same afternoon. Mrs. Brooks, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed your daughter received it personally. Perfect, I said calmly. How long did we give her? 30 days to vacate the apartment as per legal standards, he replied. Then after a pause. Mrs. Brooks, are you absolutely sure you want to do this? She is your daughter after all. Mr. Peterson, I answered steady and cold. My daughter kicked me out of my own house with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my things without asking. She treated me like I was nothing. Now she's going to learn that actions have consequences. I understand. I just wanted to make sure you'd considered everything. I have, I said simply. All of it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, imagining the moment she opened the envelope. The confusion, the disbelief, then the panic setting in. At first she would probably think it was a scam. But when she called to verify, she'd realize everything was perfectly legal. The phone rang the next morning at exactly 8 a.m. As if she had been waiting for the sun to rise to call me. Mom. Angela's voice trembled. Mom, I need to talk to you. Urgently. Good morning, honey. I replied evenly. How was Europe? Mom, I don't have time for that. I got a very strange letter. Yesterday. It says I have to leave my apartment in 30 days. It must be a mistake. Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice? How strange. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. It's called, wait, let me check, Robert Investments Incorporated. Do you know it? Robert had named the company after himself. How poetic. No, Connie. I've never heard of that company. Are you sure the letter's legitimate? That's what I'm trying to find out. Mom, please. I need your help. Edward left me in Europe. He ran off with another woman, and now I come back to this. I don't understand. What's happening? And there it was, the confirmation. Edward had abandoned her, just as I expected. Probably the moment the money ran out, or when he realized the legal trouble waiting for him back home. Poor Angela. She'd sacrificed her family for a man who wasn't worth the air he breathed. I'm so sorry, honey, I said softly. Where are you now? I'm at the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Do you want to come see me? I asked. We can talk. Yes, please. I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was almost too perfect. The man she had chosen over me was gone, and now she came running back to the mother she'd thrown away. Of course, sweetheart, I said gently. Come over whenever you want. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. This moment required a performance, and I intended to give the best one of my life. I put on my most modest gray dress, tied my hair in a neat bun, and practiced the expression of a worried but forgiving mother. When Angela walked through that door, she would see exactly what she expected, a vulnerable widow, not the woman who had quietly taken everything back. An hour later, she arrived. I was startled by how fragile she looked. She'd lost weight. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled and careless. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She whispered, Mom, and for a moment it seemed like she might hug me. But then she froze, remembering how she'd left. Come in, honey, I said warmly. Would you like some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen at the same table, where I had pored over Robert's documents weeks before. She looked so small in that chair, like the little girl who used to come to me after a bad day at school. Mom, she whispered. I'm so sorry for how I left. I know I didn't treat you well. It's in the past, honey, I replied evenly. No, it's not. I said horrible things. And now her voice broke. Now I have no one. What happened with Edward? I asked, though I already knew. He left with a 25-year-old hotel waitress in Paris. There was never any business in Europe. It was all a lie. He just wanted to run away from his debts and use the money from selling your house to fund his little adventure. All the debts? Yes, Mom. So many. I found out he'd been taking out loans for years using the apartment as collateral, but now the bank says he wasn't even the owner. How is that possible? Here was my moment. I don't know, honey. Property issues can be complicated, I said, letting the weight of the words linger. She lowered her head. The banks are coming after me for everything. Because we were married, I'm responsible for his debts. And now this eviction. Notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I don't have any money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. She started to cry, real tears this time. And for a brief second my heart trembled. I wanted to reach across the table, hold her like I used to, and tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered her voice on that phone call. The one where she treated me like an inconvenience to be discarded. And just like that, the softness turned to steel. Did you talk to a lawyer about the letter? I asked. I don't have the money for a lawyer, Mom. We spent everything. In Europe. Edward took what was left when he ran off with her. So, what are you going to do? I don't know, she said through sobs. I thought maybe I could stay with you. Just for a while. Until I find a job and can rent something small. And there it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. After throwing me out of my own home, after selling everything I'd built, after treating me like garbage, she now wanted me to save her. She wanted the poor widow she'd manufactured to save her from the ruin she'd helped create. Of course, honey. This will always be your home, I said. Angela blinked, surprised. As if I'd made it too easy for her. Really, Mom? After everything, she sputtered. You are my daughter, Angela. That will never change. She rose and hugged me, an animal's desperate, clinging embrace. I hugged her back, but the hug was no longer unconditional. There was calculation in my arms now, strategy humming under the surface. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden. Don't worry about that yet. Rest. Recover. Then we'll see what your options are. She left that afternoon to fetch a few things from the apartment. I sat in the kitchen and smiled quietly at how neatly it had played out. She had come exactly as I had planned. Broken, desperate, and unsuspecting. To her, I was still the helpless mother who needed pity. But this was only the first act. Let her settle in and feel secure. Let her believe she had found refuge. Then, when she least expected it, I would teach her the difference between being poor by choice and poor by consequence. That night I called Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, I need you to investigate Edward's debts. I want to know precisely how much he owes, to whom, and what legal options exist to separate those liabilities from my daughter. That will take time, but it's feasible, he replied. Keep it absolutely confidential. No one can know I'm behind this. Of course, Mrs. Brooks. May I ask, what is your final plan? My plan is simple, I said. I will save my daughter. But first she must understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom. I poured myself a glass of the wine Robert had been saving for special occasions. I had never felt an occasion like this. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, all the good cards were in my hand. Angela moved in the next day with 2 suitcases and a battered cardboard box. The detritus of a life collapsed. I watched her unpack in her old room, the same one she'd slept in as a teenager, and observed the humiliation threaded through every small movement. From condo luxury to childhood bed in a matter of days. Mom, I found this in the apartment, she said later, holding out a manila envelope. It was among Edward's things. It has your name on it. My heart stuttered, but my face stayed composed. My name? I echoed. She handed it over. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Robert's, but the envelope itself was newer, smaller than the one I'd discovered in the dresser. Maybe Edward found it after Dad died and forgot to give it to you, Angela guessed. Can I see it? I opened it in front of her. Inside was a short note and a small brass key. The note read, Antonia, if you are reading this after the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safety deposit box at the Central Bank, branch downtown. Box number 247. There is something there that can help you help her. Use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert. Angela read over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? Dad had one. I had no idea. You never told me. I lied softly. Do you think we should go look? Her voice sounded fragile with hope. Maybe there's something important. Documents, money, something that could fix this. Her desperation was a living thing, clinging to every possibility. I let her cling a while longer. Then after a measured pause I said, Okay. We can go tomorrow, I told her. That night we ate dinner together for the first time in months. Angela had cooked. Her hands moved nervously at the stove, and the food tasted of guilt. She told me stories of Europe, each one worse than the last. Edward had lied about everything, not just the business, but the debts too. I thought he only owed a little, she said, voice breaking. But it's over $100,000. And he used my name on some loans without me knowing. How is that possible? I asked. He forged my signature, she whispered. When we married, I gave him documents to handle our joint banking. I never imagined he'd use them like this. Is there any proof you didn't know? I asked. It's complicated. The banks say that because we were married, I'm responsible. And now he's gone, his phone's dead, his emails bounce. He vanished. Perfect. Edward had fled like the coward. He was leaving Angela to face the wreckage alone. In a way, he had done me an unexpected favor. The betrayal she was feeling now was the same cold betrayal I had borne. I'm so sorry, honey, said. I didn't know it was that bad. Me neither, she sobbed. I thought he loved me. We were going to build a life together. Instead, he used me for money and documents. Her tears came hot and steady. I resisted the urge to tell her I'd seen the signs long ago. Wouldn't that ruin the role I'd chosen? Instead, I softened my voice. Love can be blinding. Don't blame yourself. But Mom, she cried. I ruined everything. I took your house, your truck, your things for him. Now we're both ruined. It's in the past, I said. We'll be okay. No, it's not, she insisted. The banks are coming. You lost Dad's things and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two poor women trying to survive. If only she knew. At that moment, I controlled more wealth than she could. Imagine, the building she lived in, assets beyond her wildest guess, but it wasn't time to reveal any of that. The next day we went to the bank. Angela clung to hope. I kept my act, bewildered. Financially inept. The bank clerk led us to the safety deposit room, checked my ID, and opened box 247. Inside lay jewels by the dozen. Rings, necklaces, bracelets, heirloom pieces I recognized and newer items I didn't. A letter cataloged each piece and listed approximate values. Angela's eyes widened. Mom, this must be worth a fortune. Maybe, I said, studying the gems. Robert's note estimated their value at about $200,000. Significant, but still a drop compared to the rest of what Robert had left. Finding these felt like discovering a handful of coins under the sofa when you have a fortune in the bank. What do we do with them? Angela asked, already calculating. We could sell some. With this money I could pay off urgent debts. Her instinct was immediate. Use anything to fix Edward's mess. She had learned nothing. Are you sure you want to use your father's things to pay his debts? I asked. What choice do I have? She pleaded. If I don't pay, soon they'll foreclose. I don't even legally own anything. Most of it's in Edward's name. Think carefully, honey. Once you sell these, you won't get them back. I know, she said. But I can't work with lawsuits hanging over me. No employer will touch me. We took the jewels home. Angela spread them across the kitchen table and began to sort. Sell this, keep that, calculate. It was painful to see decades of family memory reduced to prices and survival math. I could get about $180,000 for these, she said after a long afternoon of bargaining and bank advisor calls. It's less than Dad estimated, but enough to cover the urgent stuff. Which debts will you pay first? I asked. The bank's advisor said to prioritize loans with collateral. Those lead to immediate foreclosure, she replied, suddenly serious and precise. The woman who had once sold my house without a second thought was now learning to prioritize, to strategize. In just a few weeks she had changed. The suffering had made her more responsible, but it had also made her fragile. That night, while Angela sat at the kitchen table sorting through debt documents like a soldier preparing for a hopeless battle, the phone rang. Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Peterson's calm, professional voice came through the line. I have a full report on Edward's debts. The situation is worse than I thought. My stomach tightened, though not from surprise. How much worse? He owes over $200,000 to multiple banks and private lenders. And more troubling, some of the loans were taken out using falsified documents with your daughter's signature. Legally, that makes Angela fully responsible. I exhaled slowly. Can we get her out of this? It's complicated, he said. If we can prove she didn't know about the fraud, there's a chance. But it will be a long and expensive legal battle. A good lawyer could cost around $50,000. And there's no guarantee. And if she simply pays? That would be fastest. But given her situation, I doubt she has the means. Mr. Peterson, I said, my voice firm. I want you to prepare everything necessary to get my daughter out of these debts. But do not tell her anything yet. You're going to pay Mrs. Brooks? I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect my daughter, I said softly. But this must be handled carefully. When I hung up, Angela was still at the table, staring at the jewels. She looked so small in that moment, like a child who had broken something precious and didn't know how to fix it. What are you thinking about, honey? She didn't look up. About Dad. About how disappointed he'd be in me if he could see what I've done with my life. Your father loved you very much, Angela. He would understand. No, Mom, she whispered. He raised me to value family, to be responsible. And I abandoned you. I sold everything he built. For a man who lied to me. For the first time since she'd returned, there was no deflection in her voice. No excuses. Just pure, aching regret. People make mistakes, I told her gently. What matters is what you learn from them. Tears filled her eyes. But how do I learn from this? How do I fix it? There it was, the question I'd been waiting for. The crack in her armor. The moment where pain turned into self-awareness. But it still wasn't time to reveal my hand. She needed to fall a little further before she could truly stand again. The following days were difficult to watch. Angela sold most of the jewels, everything except Robert's engagement ring and her grandmother's necklace. She went from store to store, negotiating, learning fast how the world treats people who've lost their safety net. Mom, I got $180,000 for the jewels, she told me one afternoon, counting bills on the kitchen table, like they were the last lifeline she had. Are you sure about this? I asked. I have no choice, she said, her voice steady but thin. If I don't pay something soon, they'll foreclose on everything. Even this house could be at risk. How ironic, I thought. She was worried about losing a house that was mine. Using the jewels Robert had left me to pay the debts of a man who had destroyed her. That night, as she spread loan statements across the table, like battle maps, the phone rang again. Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Peterson said, we've located Edward. My pulse quickened. Where? Paris. Just as your daughter suspected. But there's more. He's trying to obtain French residency through a fake marriage with the young woman she mentioned. A fake marriage? I repeated. Yes. She needs papers, and he needs a way to stay in Europe. But the real discovery is this. We found evidence that Edward intentionally forged your daughter's documents to flee the country. That means Angela can be legally cleared of the debts. A quiet thrill spread through me. We can prove it. With this evidence, yes. Fraud and coercion. Your daughter won't have to pay a cent for what he did behind her back. Perfect, I said. Start the legal process immediately. But Mr. Peterson, she can't know. Not until it's done. I won't give her false hope. It will take 3 to 4 weeks, he said. Good. That's exactly how much time I need. When I hung up, Angela glanced at me curiously. Who was that, Mom? I smiled gently. A lady asking for Mrs. Davis. Wrong number. Lying had become effortless. Every day, I moved between 2 lives. The poor, abandoned mother my daughter saw, and the wealthy woman silently pulling every string to save her. But salvation would not be a gift. It would be a lesson carved deep into her soul. The game was still mine. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly watched Angela face challenges she had never encountered before, learning how to stretch a few bills to buy groceries, how to negotiate with creditors, and how to search for a job with a ruined credit history. It was harsh, but it was the kind of education life gives when no one shields you from its blows. Mom. I went to 3 interviews today, she told me one evening, her feet swollen and her face etched with exhaustion. 2 said no because of my legal problems. The 3rd offered me a part-time job, cleaning offices at night. Are you going to take it? I asked gently. I have no choice. It doesn't pay much, but it's better than nothing. And if I work at night, I can keep job hunting during the day. Seeing my daughter, who had lived a comfortable, protected life for over 40 years, preparing to clean offices to survive broke my heart. But at the same time, I felt an unexpected swell of pride. She was finally facing reality, standing on her own feet. Are you sure you can handle this kind of work? I asked. I'll have to. I can't keep being a burden to you, Mom. It's already enough that you're letting me stay here. This is your home, Angela, I said softly. No, Ma. This is your home. I'm only here because of your generosity. But I won't take advantage of it. Forever. One night, while Angela was out on her first cleaning shift, Aurora stopped by. We sat in the kitchen with cups of tea, surrounded by family photos, silent witnesses to decades of shared joys and heartbreaks. Antonia, she said, did you know Angela would come back like this? What do you mean? I asked. Well, when she left, she was so sure of herself. She bragged about the life she'd have in Europe, about Edward's success. And now she's back, completely broken, working as a cleaner, living here again. Life has its turns, Aurora. Yes, but there's something else. She looks different. Not just sad, humble. Like she's learned something important. Aurora had always been perceptive. What do you think she's learned? I asked. I think she finally understands the value of what she took for granted. Like having a mother who loves her unconditionally. She was right. When she left and treated you so coldly, many people thought you'd never forgive her. Aurora continued. But here you are, giving her a home, supporting her when she has nowhere else to go. She's my daughter, Aurora. Yes, but not every mother would do what you're doing after everything that happened. If only Aurora knew the full truth. That I could have fixed Angela's problems from the very beginning, but I chose to let her face reality first. Not out of cruelty, but because I wanted her to understand. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I asked. I think you're doing what a good mother would. But Angela also needs to fully understand what she lost. When she turned away from you, she needs to respect you, not just need you. Aurora had put into words exactly what I felt. I didn't want Angela to return to me out of desperation. I wanted her to return out of love, gratitude, and respect. That night, Angela came home from work. She looked exhausted but different, calmer, stronger. She had earned those few dollars with her own hands. And that meant something. How was your first day? I asked. Hard, but not as bad as I thought. The other ladies helped me a lot. One of them, Mrs. Johnson, taught me tricks to clean faster. Mrs. Johnson? Yes. She's 60, has been cleaning for 20 years. She started after her husband left her with 3 small kids. She told me it's not the job she dreamed of, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds wise. She is. She said something I can't stop thinking about. There are two kinds of people in this job. The ones who never had opportunities, and the ones who wasted the opportunities they had. She asked me which I was. And what did you tell her? The truth. That I had everything, a loving family, a stable home, an inheritance, and I threw it all away for a man who wasn't worth it. Angela sat at the table with a glass of water, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. Mom, these past weeks have been the hardest of my life, she said, but also the most important. I finally understand what matters. Not money, not luxury, not impressing people. What matters is having someone who truly loves you when everything falls apart. You had every right to hate me, she continued. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I treated you like a burden. And now I'm here again, asking for your forgiveness. I already forgave you, honey, I whispered. But I haven't forgiven myself, she said. And I won't. Not until I prove that I've changed. The next morning, Mr. Peterson called. Mrs. Brooks, I have excellent news. The legal process is almost complete. We can get your daughter out of Edward's debts. It was time. After weeks of letting her face her mistakes, she had learned the lesson I needed her to learn. Now it was my turn to act. Mr. Peterson, I said, organize a meeting. It's time my daughter knows everything. We set the appointment for Friday. Angela agreed to come, nervous about how to afford a lawyer. Mom, I don't have money for legal fees, she said. Don't worry about that now, I replied with a calm smile. Let's just listen. That Friday, Angela dressed in her best clothes, though they hung a little loose on her thinner frame. As we entered Mr. Peterson's office, she nervously wrung her hands, bracing herself for another wave of bad news. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. Mr. Peterson greeted us with his usual professional smile. Mrs. Brooks, Miss Brooks, thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing us, Angela replied, her voice hesitant. Although I should warn you, my financial situation is very complicated. I probably can't afford high fees. That's exactly what we're here to discuss, Mr. Peterson said, exchanging a knowing glance with me. But first, I need you to review these documents. He handed Angela a thick folder. She opened it and began to read, her expression slowly shifting from confusion to disbelief. I don't understand, she murmured. These documents say Edward forged my signature, that there's proof of fraud, that I'm not responsible for the debts. That's right, Mr. Peterson confirmed. We've been investigating your case for weeks. There's enough evidence to prove you were a victim of identity fraud. Angela's voice trembled. But how is that possible? Who paid for this investigation? I don't have money for it. I looked at her. It was my moment. Angela, there's something I need to tell you. What, Mom? I took a deep breath. After weeks of careful acting, the truth was finally ready to come out. Your father left me, more than you knew. Much more. Mr. Peterson reached for a second folder and handed it to Angela. This time, it contained property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, everything Robert had built in secret. Angela read in silence for several minutes. Her face moved through confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, understanding. Mom, this says you own the building where I lived. And other properties, bank accounts, investments? Yes. This means, when I sold the beach house, it was already yours, and the sale was fraudulent. I already recovered it. Angela's eyes searched mine. How long have you known this? Since the day I called you from the doctor's office, when I came back from Europe asking for help. Yes. You knew you could solve all my problems, when you saw me crying every night? Yes. A long silence filled the office. Angela closed the folders and looked directly into my eyes. Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer when you could have helped me? I had been waiting for that question. Because, Angela, you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way. You needed to understand the value of what you lost. Family, respect, responsibility. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just money you took from me. It was dignity, love, trust, Tears streamed down her face, but they were no longer self-pitying. They were tears of understanding. I abandoned you when you needed me most, she whispered. Yes, I said softly. I treated you like garbage. And I saved you anyway. But not in the way I expected, she said. No, I admitted. I didn't save you by giving you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom, so you could learn to save yourself. Mr. Peterson discreetly interjected. Miss Brooks, your mother has covered all legal expenses to free you from Edward's debts. She's also recovered all properties sold fraudulently. You are completely free of legal troubles. And the cleaning job? I asked. You can quit if you want. Angela shook her head. No. I hope I don't. Why? Because this job is teaching me lessons I never learned when everything was easy. The value of effort. The dignity of honest work, the importance of every dollar earned. She wiped her tears and looked at me, but this time it wasn't the look of a dependent daughter. It was the look of a grown woman. Respecting another grown woman. Do you forgive me, Mom? She asked softly. I forgave you long ago, honey, I said. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know, she admitted. I did unforgivable things. People make mistakes, Angela. The important part is what we do after recognizing them. Mr. Peterson left the room for a few minutes, leaving us alone. Angela and I sat in silence, absorbing everything that had happened. Mom, she said finally, even if you hadn't had all this money, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson? I asked. That there is nothing more valuable than someone who loves you unconditionally. During these weeks, the only thing that kept me sane was knowing I had a home with you. That no matter how badly I ruined my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Angela. I know, but I also know I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it every day, with respect, gratitude, and actions, not just words. The weeks that followed were about rebuilding, not the comfortable life she once imagined, but a stronger, more authentic one. Even though she now knew I could solve all her problems with a phone call, Angela chose to keep her night cleaning job. Mom, I need to finish what I started, she told me one afternoon. I can't go back to comfort as if nothing happened. Are you sure? I asked. You don't need to punish yourself forever. It's not punishment, she said, putting on her uniform. It's a way to remember who I was, and who I want to be now. I watched her move with new confidence, her posture firm, her steps deliberate. The broken, dependent woman who had arrived at my door months ago was gone. In her place stood a woman who had found dignity, strength, and self-respect in honest work. Aurora came to visit that afternoon, as she had done every few days since Angela returned. Antonia, she began, leaning in with curiosity. There are some very strange rumors going around the neighborhood. What kind of rumors? I asked, trying to sound casual. People are saying that you're not as poor as we all thought. Someone saw Angela leaving a very elegant lawyer's office downtown. Then they saw her paying off all her debts at the bank. People talk a lot, Aurora, I said, smiling faintly. Yes, but they're also saying you got your beach house back, and somehow managed to solve all of Angela's legal problems. That costs a lot of money, Antonia. Aurora knew me too well to be fooled for long. I poured a cup of tea and sat across from her, ready to be honest. Robert left me, much more than anyone knew. How much more? She asked, her eyes widening. Enough that Angela and I will never have to worry about money again. Aurora was silent for a moment, processing the revelation. Then she asked, and why did you pretend to be poor all these months? Because I needed Angela to learn something she couldn't learn any other way, I admitted. Then I told her everything, Angela's cruel phone call, the plan of silent revenge, the weeks of watching her hit rock bottom, and the final revelation in Mr. Peterson's office. Aurora leaned back, impressed and shaken. Antonia, that is brilliant. And terrible at the same time. Terrible, I agreed. Because I let my own daughter suffer when I could have helped her immediately. But brilliant, because she learned the value of what she had lost. If I had simply given her money, she would have learned that someone will always rescue her from the consequences of her own mistakes. Aurora's eyes softened. But didn't it hurt? To see her suffer. Every day. Every night. I saw her crying, exhausted, defeated. But I knew that if I rescued her too soon, she wouldn't have learned the full lesson. Aurora nodded slowly. And do you think she learned it? Look for yourself, I said. Angela knows she now has enough money to live comfortably, but she chose to keep her job. She knows she could move to a better place, but she decided to stay here with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about debts, but she's using her own earnings to help other women in similar situations. She's giving, not taking. Aurora smiled knowingly. That's not the Angela who went to Europe. No, I agreed. This Angela understands that money is a tool, not a goal. That dignity comes from work, respect, and self-reliance, not from material possessions. That night, Angela returned from work and found me reading in the living room. Mom, she said, sitting down beside me. I have to tell you something. Today, Mrs. Johnson asked me if I was the daughter of the rich lady from the north side of town. And what did you tell her? I asked. That I am. That I have enough money that I don't need to work. But then she asked me why I was still working. And what did you say? I told her it's because I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. Aurora's words from earlier echoed in my mind as Angela continued, smiling. And do you know what she said next? What? I asked. She laughed and said, Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting. Rich. I looked at Angela then. The same young woman who had once treated me with disdain, but now transformed, proud, humble, independent, and wise beyond her years. She had learned the lessons I had hoped she would, and in doing so, had become someone I could truly admire. For the first time in a long while, I felt a quiet peace settle over us. Our lives were no longer defined by money, betrayal, or desperation. We had rebuilt something far more valuable. Trust, respect, and the deep bond of a mother and daughter who had chosen each other, and learned what it truly means to be rich. Aurora smiled knowingly. Antonia, she's completely changed. She's no longer the girl who ran away chasing illusions. She's thoughtful, responsible, and compassionate. I nodded. Exactly. The lessons she learned were harsh, but she internalized them. She didn't just survive her mistakes, she transformed them into purpose. Angela looked up from her books, her eyes bright. Mom, I've been thinking about the foundation you started. I want to help. Not just with money, but with my time, my energy. I've seen so many women struggling, and I know what it feels like to be completely alone. I want to make sure they don't feel that way. I reached for her hand, a warmth spreading through me I hadn't felt in years. That's exactly the kind of woman you've become, Angela. Responsible, caring, and wise. I couldn't be prouder. She smiled, the smile of someone who had earned it through struggle and reflection. And Mom, I finally understand what you meant about being truly rich. It's not the money. It's the love, the respect, and the dignity you build. Not just for yourself, but for others. That's what I want my life to be about. I hugged her tightly, feeling the full circle of our journey. Then you've learned the most important lesson of all. Wealth is nothing without wisdom, compassion, and integrity. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Angela had completed her social work studies with excellence and had begun working at the foundation, helping women reclaim their lives. She still maintained her independence, still contributed to the household, and still carried the lessons of humility and responsibility with her every day. Aurora visited that Friday afternoon, as usual, and we sat together with tea. I have to confess, she said, eyes twinkling. I thought you were cruel at first. And now? I asked. Now I see you as the wisest mother I've ever known. Look at Angela. Truly look at her. She's everything I hoped she'd become and more. Angela came in quietly from the kitchen, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables. Mom, Aurora, I'm taking these to the family I've been helping. They couldn't afford them this week, and I thought I could give a little extra. Aurora shook her head in admiration. And she's doing it all with her own resources. That's incredible. I smiled, watching my daughter move with purpose and grace. The girl who had once abandoned me, chasing a man and a dream, was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood that true wealth isn't counted in jewels or property, but in integrity, love, and the courage to face life's consequences. As we sat together that afternoon, I realized that our family bond had not just survived, it had been reborn, tempered by hardship and strengthened by choice. Angela's journey had taught us both something invaluable. The richest lives are those we build with wisdom, heart, and respect, not just for ourselves but for those we love. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the kind of contentment that comes from knowing a plan, perfectly executed, had truly transformed a life. That night, Angela and I had dinner on the porch, something that had become our little ritual. It was our time to talk about the day, plan for the future, and simply enjoy each other's company. Mom, I received a very strange letter today, she said, cutting her salad. From whom? I asked, tension rising. From Edward. My muscles tensed. Edward? He wrote to you? Yes, from prison in France. He was sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. He says he regrets everything and wants my forgiveness. And how do you feel about it? Honestly, I don't feel anything. No anger. No sadness, no desire for revenge. It's as if that part of my life happened decades ago. I smiled at her maturity. The woman sitting across from me had developed a strength that came from hitting rock bottom and standing back up on her own. Do you know what this whole experience taught me, Mom? She asked. What? That true love isn't the one that tells you what you want to hear. True love teaches you what you need to learn, even when it hurts. Edward told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. You taught me that true wealth comes from hard work, respect, and genuine relationships. That night, after Angela went to her room to study, I sat on the porch alone, gazing at the stars, thinking of Robert. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and I finally felt I had fulfilled that promise the right way. I hadn't saved her by giving her money. I had saved her by teaching her to save herself. The next day we visited the beach house together for the first time since I had reclaimed it. Angela stood for a moment, taking it all in. Some things don't change but others do, she said quietly. I am not the same person who sold this house. Inside, she touched the furniture, looked at the photos, and whispered apologies. I turned all our family memories into money for a worthless man. I didn't even feel it when I sold this house. It's forgiven, honey, I said. This house holds decades of summers, birthdays, Christmases. Robert built that porch with his own hands. The garden, your swimming lessons, it's all here. And so is he, in every corner, every memory. Angela smiled through tears. I know. And I know he's proud of how I handled everything. We spent the day cooking, cleaning, and reconnecting with the house and the values it represented. As the sun set, Angela turned to me. Mom, I have a proposal. I want to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women leaving domestic violence situations, a place where they can rebuild their lives. I felt my heart swell. I think that's a beautiful idea. Robert would have loved that. The best sanctuaries are the ones shared. That night, before falling asleep, I spoke to Robert in silence. We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understands what truly matters. And for the first time since his death, I felt his answer. You've both become stronger than you think. Justice had arrived not as revenge, but as education. Not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we had gained something far more valuable than money. A relationship built on love, respect, and a foundation no future crisis could shake. Did you enjoy this story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to support more stories like this, a super thanks goes a long way. Don't forget to subscribe and check out 2 more life stories I highly recommend. See you in the next story, with love and respect.